Today it's time to put a spotlight on Trevor James saxophones, and in particular their new EVO range of models. And you can see here, produced in this spectacular range of finishes. I have the matte gold one in front of me here. Now the thing with Trevor James is they're very famous for their student instruments. They've been making them for decades, and of course they have their signature custom models right at the top. But what about that slightly confusing middle ground? We've had the Horn 88, we've had the SR, we've had the SR Evo, and now we've got the EVO. I mean, it's even quite complicated for us guys to try and remember all these slightly different brandings. So how does it all work together? Well, the good news is it looks like there's some simplification coming along the way. The EVO, as of now, has taken over the Horn 88 and the SR Evo. Sounds confusing already, right? Well, we've already got one simplification there. And then, of course, just above the EVO, we have the SR. Solid workhorse of an instrument, but these two are very close in price. So we have a little bit of a problem here. But the good news is, having spoken to Trevor James recently, it seems that the SR is potentially on its way out to make room for this wonderful new EVO saxophone, which I'm going to thoroughly explore today. And wouldn't that make life a lot more simple if we just had one simple mid-range Trevor James saxophone that we can talk about and get into? So that is what I am going to do today. So in today's video, I'm going to put this instrument, and the tenor version as well, through its paces, and it seems logical to me to compare it to a student instrument. So it makes sense, of course, to use the Trevor James student instrument, because let's keep it all Trevor James themed. Why not? Just do a comparison and see what extra we're getting with the EVO in comparison to a student instrument. The first thing that strikes you with this new EVO range of saxophones from Trevor James is the array of finishes on offer. Aside from a standard gold lacquer, we have here in tenor this matte gold finish, which looks really striking up front and close and personal. I'm really impressed by this particular finish. And on soprano here we have a black nickel plated finish with gold keywork. And for those of you looking for something just a bit different, something rather cool in my view, we have this matte black finish. And you can see it nicely contrasts with the shiny black keywork there as well. So one of the key things to say from the outset with this new EVO sax is that it is an improvement in many ways from the previous SR Evo. It's actually sourced from an entirely different factory. And one of the key things to start with is this new neck design, which offers a really great and immediate response beyond the previous design. Then we've also got a really nice, close and quiet and smooth key action. Beyond that, we've got something fairly standard that we see with a lot of intermediate and professional instruments, which is this ribbed construction. So we've got plates of brass soldered onto the body, onto which the posts themselves are soldered. And then we also have some new ergonomic features here. We've got, with the palm keys, a very smooth profile here. Feels great under the fingers. Then we also have a new table key arrangement here. It's very compact and just slightly closer to where the left hand naturally sits. We've also got, and this is a thing for technicians love this sort of thing, but some players do as well. We've got these adjuster screws here, these tiny little adjuster screws on the right and left hand stacks. Reminiscent of what we get with the Yamaha 280, who really started that trend. And it just allows technicians to adjust and regulate these keys much more easily. And then we also have double key arms here, which is something fairly standard that you see again with upgrade instruments. It just adds that extra degree of solidity with these bottom keys. And then finally, we have these arm connectors here on the side C and B flat, which entirely wrap around the keys. Normally there's just this sort of jaw that juts out like this, but these ones entirely wrap around the keys, as I say, and it just offers a really nice operation there with these keys. You can really feel it actually. So that's the sort of overall spec of the instrument. So there's a lot going on there, there's a lot of quality, but to me it makes sense to play this instrument in comparison to a student instrument, as I said at the outset. And for that purpose, we're going to use the TJ horn, because I think it's important for you guys to hear the sound of a horn and the playability of the horn, and then just how it marks up towards an instrument like this, and whether we are getting a significant difference in tone, in response, in feel. So I'll give you my conclusions as to that once I have played both instruments. Before I talk about the actual tone of the two instruments compared, the first thing I really want to say, which does again put a spotlight on the great work that Trevor James have done with this instrument, is that really fundamentally for me, the differences come down to the playability, the way it feels under the fingers. So with the horn, it feels pretty good. I mean, it's a really good student instrument. But what I get on the horn compared to this is that the key action on the horn feels a little bit higher, and it just feels like there's a little more going on with the travel from the starting point to when you make contact with the instrument. With this one, it just has a slightly closer key action, and it's very smooth, and it's got this sort of dull sound to it as you make contact with the tone holes, which is very reminiscent of a professional saxophone. I think of the likes of Yannick Gazala's when I hear that sound and when I have that feeling. So that's my overall feeling in terms of just the keyboard under my fingers. It feels great. And also, it's got a sort of nimble feel to it as well, in the sense that the mother of pearls on this instrument, the new Evo, feel on the small side, which I like, and they feel dimpled. They feel just very effective under the fingers. So I really like that. In terms of just other things, before I talk about the actual tone, the intonation, I actually did some checks beforehand with a tuner just to see where we are. Because often with these intermediate instruments, we actually get an improvement in certain areas. Perhaps the top areas may be slightly less sharp, or you might find around the break area that the C and the B are more in tune, whereas on the student instruments, you have to work with them a little bit more around that break area. But actually, I found the two instruments very comparable in terms of intonation. They both had their quirks, that's for sure, but it's all easy to manipulate, and they're highly playable in terms of the intonation. So they both sort of get a tick in terms of that. But when it comes down to the actual sound, I actually found the two of them very similar and very satisfying. I found it a very full tone on both instruments, no complaints there. I'm mainly finding that I'm just getting the sound of me and my mouthpiece and my reed. That's what's coming through, and the instrument is just doing what I want it to do. But where the two separate in terms of the tone for my money is that the horn has quite a sort of heavy, almost thick sound, which is very desirable. With the Evo, I find that it is just a little more refined and defined, and just has a bit more of a sort of a head to each note, some definition there, which just gives that air of sort of sophistication, I suppose, which is something that we really like to see in a saxophone of this value. I certainly do. It makes me feel like if I'm going to invest in an instrument of this price, so double the price of the horn, that I am getting something extra for my money, something that tells it apart from what we're getting with the student instrument. But as I say, back to the outset again, the two instruments do largely cross over tone-wise, and they're both very good in that aspect. But this one just takes off in terms of the sophistication element. So returning back to the instrument in question, the new EVO range, I suppose we have to ask ourselves, who is this instrument for? And the obvious answer would be it's a simple upgrade saxophone for players who've been playing for a number of years. You've been playing your student instrument and this is the next step up. Well, it's true, that does apply, and very much this would be a great step up. But also I feel that this is a very affordable instrument with a lot going on in terms of the professional aspect of it. And in that sense, it doesn't just have to be for you upgrade players, shall we say, who are looking to try and attain those middle grades and then you look to move on to a professional instrument. This could be an instrument for life for many players, you know, whether it's people playing semi-professionally, community players, playing various different ensembles. It's got such a good overall playability to it and tone, it just does everything, that I think that this could be a saxophone for a broad spectrum of players. Okay, there may be many of you out there who wish to go beyond this instrument and get those ultimate, very expensive, we all know the brands, the Selmers and all the rest of it, and spend the money on the Supremes. But if you don't want to go into that camp and you just want a solid workhorse of an instrument, this does the job just fine. So from that point of view, I think that this could be very successful in the sense that it does appeal to a wide variety of players. So yeah, overall, personally, I'm very happy with these instruments. I think they've done a great job, and it's also just nice that we have an array of finishes to just excite all tastes out there. So there we go. I give you the new Trevor James Evo.